All right, we have some major breaking news. I want to walk you through the escalating situation in Los Angeles because it's only being escalated by one side in a very disproportionate way. Not only was Trump sending out 3 a.m. unhinged Truth Social posts, further escalating the situation, being the opposite of a leader, but then the administration released this presidential memoranda. It is a memoranda that approves the use of U.S. armed forces against protesters, labeling these protests as, quote, acts of rebellion. And it's really short, so we'll read through it in just 1 second. But I could make a whole video about the irony of the dude who tried to overthrow a peaceful election, calling these small scattered protest rebellions, but we won't even talk about that. That misses the point. I want to talk about the disproportionate effect here. I want to talk about how the Trump admin is trying to gain control and control a narrative. We'll break all of this down, but for a quick palate cleanser, can I introduce you to the dude? This is like the coolest dude to exist.
But you told me you got caught up in the tear gas as well. Describe what happened to you.
Oh, just tasted a little tear gas. Tasted like fascism.
Tasted like fascism. The skater dudes were really out there representing yesterday. There was one video of a dude just eating like 10 pellets in a row, and he walks off with his skateboard, does not care at all. But I guess I want to jump in before we hit Trump's posts. I want to talk about the actual consequences of this. I wrote a Substack post for the Mockler HQ, and you guys will like what this says. I wrote last night at like midnight is when I was writing this. It says, let's be crystal clear here. Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard into Los Angeles is an unnecessary, dangerous escalation that is purely an exercise in suppressing dissent in narrative building. We need to break any narrative this administration tries to push and make this explicit. It's not about public safety, it's about control. Not only has Governor Newsom taken strenuous steps to offer and provide the support of local and state resources, but he has repeatedly said there is no reality in which the National Guard is necessary. Against Governor Newsom's will, Trump is overriding the California National Guard. After sending undertrained agents into majority Latino neighborhoods to carry out deportations in a brazen and reckless manner, the Trump admin officials immediately took to Fox News and X, using increasingly extreme rhetoric that only further inflamed tensions on the ground. The Trump admin built up outrage, then used that outrage as a pretext to justify deploying the National Guard. If you like my midnight writings, make sure you subscribe to my Substack. It'll be the first link in the description below. It is completely free. But here's the important piece. Trump supporters are already gleefully lining up to cheer his use of Title X to send 2,000 troops. Here's how we break the MAGA narrative and explain the danger. Number 1, proportionality is what separates justice from abuse. This one is simple. If someone slaps me in the face and I pull out a gun, that's not a proportionate response. It's an escalation. In the same way, when a low-level protest breaks out in Los Angeles and Trump answers with military force, that's not about restoring order. That is not proportionate. Also, you can't claim to defend states' rights, then cheer as a state's will is trampled. Conservatives are constantly talking about the importance of state sovereignty. States' rights are the core of their philosophy, from vaccines or abortion, throwing it back to the states, or education, allowing the states to decide. They insist the federal government stays out. Marjorie Taylor Greene just had an impassioned speech where she talked about the state's ability to dictate their AI laws. So here's the question. If California's own governor says federal troops are not needed, if the LAPD says federal troops are not needed, which they did, why is Trump allowed to override him and send in 2,000 National Guard troops anyway? If they care about states' rights, they should be the first ones opposing this federal overreach. 3, this is an exercise in narrative building. It's theatrical. This is the important one. If it's truly about protecting the public, Trump would have coordinated with Governor Newsom or worked with state officials and ensured that any necessary support was provided. Instead, his admin and the people around him are flooding Fox News with inflammatory rhetoric. If you want to follow my Substack and get these breaking news updates, it's in the description below. But let's continue. Look at this takedown right here. Kash Patel, the FBI director, said, "Hit a cop, you're going to jail. Doesn't matter where you came from, how you got here, or what movement speaks to you." And then Julia said, "Except the ones that Trump pardoned for assaulting cops on January 6th, right? These people are such hypocrites." Then Donald Trump at 3 a.m. posts, "Great job by the National Guard in Los Angeles after 2 days of violence, clashes, and unrest." The thing is, most people in Los Angeles didn't even know this was happening. most of my fans in Los Angeles said we didn't even know like any of this was happening. It's like very contained, scattered protests where some people are really riled up in certain areas and it's mostly peaceful in other areas. Like it literally 95% peaceful, and there's obviously going to be some people that are very, very riled up. But this says we have an incompetent governor, Newscomb, and mayor, Base, who were, I mean, could you imagine if a Democratic politician called a Republican governor scum? If Obama repeatedly was calling someone scum in 2014, we would never hear the end of it. Ever. Now he's saying these radical left protesters, by instigators and often paid troublemakers, will not be tolerated. Also, from now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. That goes against the freedom of expression, the right to assemble. You can't just say masks are not allowed at protests. Again, insane amounts of federal overreach coming directly from the party that said they would never do that. This is the one that I really want to talk about. This memoranda is a massive escalation. This reads, numerous incidents of violence and disorder have recently occurred and threaten to continue in response to the enforcement of federal law by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. In addition, violent protests threaten the security and significant damage to federal immigration detention facilities and other federal property. To the extent that protests or acts of violence directly inhibit the execution of laws, they constitute a form of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. Are you kidding me? Now they will throw around the term rebellion. I know for a fact people like Tim Pool, these Russian shills, will be saying this is the worst insurrection to happen in the history of America. Nothing like this has happened maybe since the Civil War. And then they're going to completely say that January 6th doesn't count because, I don't know, but now they're talking about going against the authority of the government. That is what Trump's been doing every single day. To continue, in light of these incidents and credible threats of continued violence, by the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, I'm hereby calling into federal service members and units of the National Guard under 10 U.S.C. 12406 to temporarily protect ICE and other United States government personnel. He says it's an act of rebellion. The members and units of the National Guard called into the federal service shall be at least 2,000 National Guard personnel, and the duration of duty should be 60 days or at the discretion of the Secretary of Defense. But the insane thing is, Kristi Noem, roughly a year ago, February of 2024, said on Fox News, if Joe Biden federalizes the National Guard, that would be a direct attack on states' rights. Over the last several years, we've seen Democrats try to take away our freedoms of religion, assembly, and speech. Governor Newsom then quote tweeted that and said, this aged well. I could point out like 8 different pressure points of hypocrisy in this Kristi Noem thing. The hypocrisy is insane. First of all, Trump just federalized the National Guard. Trump just did a direct attack on states' rights. But if you want to talk about taking away the freedom of religion, assembly, and speech, what about Trump tweeting that masks will not be allowed? He's trying to scatter and squash even low-level protests just to draw a narrative and assert control. And there are a few things I want to finish off by saying, if you made it this far in the video. A lot of people in the comment section keep saying this is a distraction. You're getting distracted by this. I disagree. First of all, we still do a balance of news. I've still been talking about Elon and Epstein and Ukraine and Russia, and I've still been talking about the big ugly bill. All of these things we still talk about. But Trump deploying the National Guard isn't a distraction. That's like the key right there. That is Trump invoking the Insurrection Act, calling protests an act of rebellion. It is a massive escalation, and I disagree with the idea that it's a distraction. But if you made it this far in the video, drop a like. We did a really fun 1-hour live stream yesterday. If you never want to miss a live stream, just make sure you have the notification bell on below. See you on the next one, and peace out.